everyone, welcome to Dwellite. Problem is possibility. Today I am going to discuss the confusions around acute pancreatitis and most common clinical questions you can encounter, especially during your exams. All postgraduates, both the physicians and surgeons, and even the DMOs, post MBBS students, can take advantage of this session. What is the differential diagnosis of any patient who presents with severe abdominal pain to the ER? Acute pancreatitis. There will be epigastric severe pain and tenderness, and you can confirm the diagnosis of acute pancreatitis with the help of lipase, amylase, and appropriate imaging. Peritonitis. There will be diffuse guarding, rigidity, tenderness all over the abdomen, and with the help of CT scan, you can confirm the diagnosis of peritonitis and some perforation, viscous perforation. Obstruction. There will be abdominal distension, and with the help of abdomen X-ray and CT abdomen, we can confirm the diagnosis of obstruction. Cholecystitis. There will be right hypogastric pain, tenderness, and Murphy's sign will be there, and ultrasound abdomen will confirm the diagnosis of cholecystitis. MI. Sometimes inferior wall MI can present with severe abdominal pain. With the help of ECG, 2D echo, and troponin I, we can confirm the diagnosis of inferior wall MI. Acid peptic disorder. If the pain relieves with proton pump inhibitors, most likely the pain is because of acid peptic diseases. We can further confirm the diagnosis with the help of upper GI endoscopy. What are all clinical signs you can expect in case of acute pancreatitis? If it is severe pancreatitis, you can now see Cullen sign and Gray Turner sign. These two indicates some amount of retroperitoneal bleed. These two are morbid signs, indicates poor prognosis. Cullen signs is nothing but periumbilical discoloration, periumbilical bluish discoloration. Gray Turner sign, bluish discoloration in the flanks. Another clinical sign is there can be possibility of reddish patches, especially on the extensor surfaces of all four limbs. These reddish patches or reddish discoloration is because of necrosis of subcutaneous fat. Pershner retinopathy. This is also one of the sign of severe acute pancreatitis. It is because of ischemic changes in the retina. Because of activation of complement, the thrombosis will be there in the retinal vessels, causes ischemia of the retina, sudden loss of the vision. This loss of the vision can be permanent or temporary. If it is temporary, the vision will be resumed after 8 to 12 weeks. Sometimes the recovery can be partial recovery. That is Pershner retinopathy. How do you investigate? How do you confirm the diagnosis of acute pancreatitis? Of course, you have to send all routine labs along with disease specific investigations. The disease specific investigations are amylase, lipase, and urine trypsinose, some biomarkers and enzymes. So, what is the role of routine investigations to diagnose acute pancreatitis or while during approach of acute pancreatitis? The role of CPP. You have to look at hematocrit part. If hematocrit is more than 44, there is severe intravascular volume deficit, one of the poor prognostic marker. It predicts occurrence of necrosis. If hematocrit is more than 45, you have to be very aggressive regarding fluid resuscitation. Coming to RFT, renal functional test, you have to look at both blood urea and creatinine. It indicates if those levels are abnormal, indicates acute kidney injury, one of the poor prognostic marker, and we have to be aggressive in terms of fluid resuscitation to avoid further injury to the kidney. LFT helps to diagnose the etiology of the acute pancreatitis and at the same time uh, to prognosticate acute pancreatitis. If there is direct hyperbilirubinemia, the pancreatitis can be because of cholestasis or some gallstones or CVD stones. If there is elevation of transaminases, that indicates poor prognosis. Coming to chest X-ray, you have to look for both ARDS signs and pleural effusions. This indicates poor prognosis and patient may require ICU admission. To confirm the diagnosis of pancreatitis, we have to look at all these three enzymes, amylase, lipase, and urinary trypsinogen. For the trypsinogen, you have to check the urine sample, not the blood sample. We have to understand the dynamics of these three enzymes before coming to a conclusion. Lipase. Lipase starts to rise within 4 to 8 hours of onset of symptoms. Peak will within 24 hours and comes back to baseline within 1 to 2 weeks. It is being produced not only in the case of acute pancreatitis. The level of lipase will be elevated in case of renal diseases, appendicitis, acute cholecystitis, chronic pancreatitis, and bowel obstruction. Coming to amylase, it starts to rise within 6 to 24 hours. Peak will be within 48 hours. Comes back to baseline within 3 to 7 days. Within a week, comes back to normal, comes back to baseline. It's been produced not only by pancreas but also by salivary glands, small intestines, ovaries, adipose tissue, and skeletal muscles. Urinary trypsinogen, it's secreted only by pancreas, not by any other organ. It starts to rise within few hours in the urine and it will be negative by third day of the disease. So if you observe the timeline, lipase has wider range to diagnose acute pancreatitis. Trypsinogen has very narrow range, but trypsinogen is most specific, lipase is more sensitive. If you go by trypsinogen alone, high chance of false negative reports in case, especially in case of delayed presentation, if is preferred over other two enzymes to diagnose acute pancreatitis. Lipase is preferred over amylase and urinary trypsinogen because it is highly sensitive and it has wider diagnostic range, less incidence of false negative. What is the role of imaging? Absolutely, there is no role of CUCT abdomen in first 24 hours of presentation. The only role of CUCT abdomen is there after 3 to 4 days of onset of symptoms to know the extent of the disease and to diagnose the local complications like peripancreatic inflammation and pancreatic necrosis. Within 24 hours of onset of the disease, if there is any diagnostic dilemma to rule out other causes of acute abdomen, we can do CECT abdomen. And we have to do ultrasound abdomen at the time of admission, especially to know the etiology of the acute pancreatitis. If it is gallstone related pancreatitis, in the first admission itself, patient may require laparoscopic or open cholecystectomy to avoid recurrence of pancreatitis. Coming to etiology, what are the common causes of acute pancreatitis? The most common cause is gallstone. Second is alcohol. Patient should consume alcohol for more than 5 years and at least more than 50 grams per day. That is the definition of heavy alcohol. Heavy alcohol is one of the cause of acute pancreatitis. Hypertriglyceridemia. If triglyceride levels more than 1000 milligrams per liter in the blood, it can cause pancreatitis. Other causes, drugs. Uh, Better to memorize at least definitive association drugs. There are three classes of the drugs which have been associated with pancreatitis. Class 1 definitive association, class 2 probable association, class 3 possible association. So better to memorize at least definitive associated drugs with the pancreatitis. This is the big list of drugs which can cause pancreatitis. Anatomical and genetic. Most common anatomical anomaly which can cause pancreatitis is pancreatic divisor. Some genetic mutations also can attribute to pancreatitis. Microlithiasis. CVD stones of less than 3 mm called microlithiasis. So microlithiasis is one of the cause we easily ignore or we easily missed with our conventional imaging. To diagnose microlithiasis, patient requires MRCP, MRI of the pancreas to rule out CVD obstruction because of small stones. Hypercalcemia, one of the cause of pancreatitis. Some infections, mumps, Coxsackie B virus, dengue, HIV, Salmonella, Shigella, Campylobacter, E. coli, Legionella, Leptospira, and even Brucella. Especially in the Indian scenario, we should not ignore the tropical diseases is one of the cause of pancreatitis. Even COVID, coronavirus can cause pancreatitis. Other causes like trauma, toxins, scorpion sting, these are also can cause pancreatitis. Idiopathic pancreatitis is nothing but if you can rule out all other causes of pancreatitis, we can label it as idiopathic pancreatitis. Once the diagnosis has been confirmed, you have to prognosticate the family and you have to know the prognosis to anticipate some complications. How can you estimate the prognosis? There are almost 7 to 8 scoring systems to estimate the prognosis of a patient with acute pancreatitis, but none of them is precisely or accurately predict the prognosis. Close monitoring, early detection of organ failure, presence or absence of comorbidities, presence or absence of obesity, and with the help of some imaging, we can accurately predict the prognosis to some extent. Of course, we will see what are different scoring systems available to predict the prognosis. PSAP score, one of the common score, and it is simple, and we can score the patient, or we can estimate the score at the bedside itself. Blood urea nitrogen, impaired mental status, presence or absence of the SIRS, age more than 60 years, and presence or absence of pleural effusion. Each point will score 1 point. So each parameter will score 1 point. 0 to 2, lower mortality; 3 to 5, higher mortality. Revised Atlanta score. With the help of this score, we can categorize the patient mild, moderate, and severe. If there is no organ failure, no local or systemic complications, mild; transient organ failure, moderate; persistent organ failure, severe. Severe pancreatitis. Transient means organ failure sustained for less than 48 hours. Persistent means more than 48 hours duration of organ failure. Ranson's criteria, absolutely in this modern era, there is no role of Ranson's scoring system to predict the prognosis. It's basically very complex, and there is subtle difference between gallstone related pancreatitis and non-gallstone related pancreatitis. It has many parameters to estimate, and to get this score, we have to wait for 48 hours. These are all parameters in the Ranson's criteria. Another score, modified Glasgow or pancreas score. The mnemonic to memorize is pancreas. P for PaO2, A for age, neutrophil count, calcium, renal functional test, enzymes, AST and ALT, albumin, and sugar. With the help of this, we can predict the prognosis, but not very accurate score. If we see four independent parameters: PaO2, WBC count, urea, and LDH. These four parameters are more accurate, and these four parameters independently predict the prognosis of patient. Pancreatic outcome prediction score. It has almost uh, six parameters. The score ranges from 0 to 40. Apache to score among all score, this is better uh, predictor of prognosis. If score of 0 to 2, 2% mortality; 3 to 4, 15% mortality; 5 to 6, 40% mortality; 7 to 8, 100% mortality. These are all different parameters in Apache 2 score. Ranson's criteria of more than 3, Apache score of more than 8, Glasgow score of more than 3, CT severity index of more than 6, C-reactive protein more than 150. These are all parameters with the help of which we can predict the severity of the pancreas. If these are all thresholds above which we can categorize the patient under the category of severe acute pancreatitis. CT severity score. Modified CT severity score, the score ranges from 0 to 10. The parameters are pancreatic inflammation, necrosis, and extrapancreatic complications. Inflammation 0, no inflammation. 2, intrinsic pancreatic abnormalities with or without inflammatory changes in the peripancreatic fat. 4, pancreatic or peripancreatic fluid collections or peripancreatic fat necrosis. Coming to necrosis part, 0, none; 30% or less, 2; more than 30%, 4. Extrapancreatic complications, score of 2 for one or more pleural effusions, ascites, vascular complications, parenchymal complications, and GI involvement. Total score of 0 to 2, mild; 4 to 6, moderate; 8 to 10, severe. Severity index of 0 to 3, mortality 3%, morbidity 8%; 4 to 6, mortality 6%, morbidity 35%; 7 to 10, mortality 17%, morbidity 92%. Among all scoring systems, the Apache 2 score and CT severity score are better predictors of mortality. As I told you, above all scoring systems, close monitoring of the patient, early pickup of the complications, and presence or absence of comorbids, presence or absence of obesity. These are all the things helps us to predict the prognosis and helps us to prevent organ injuries and to manage the patient. At admission, pre-existing risk factors, advanced age, obesity, blood urea nitrogen, creatine, chest X-ray will predict the prognosis. At, at 24 hours, BISAP, SOFA and Apache 2. At 48 hours, CRP, BISAP, Apache 2, SOFA Glasgow score, and CT severity index. Later phase of acute pancreatitis, CRP and CT severity index. These are all scoring systems or parameters which can predict the prognosis at different timelines. Other prognostic markers: CRP of more than 150 milligram per liter at day 3, hematocrit of more than 44, urea of more than 20 milligram per liter per deciliter. So these are all three independent parameters which can predict the prognosis and which can predict the incidence of pancreatic necrosis. What is the role of ERCP? Enteroscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography. This helps for both the diagnosis of CVD stones and at the same time to intervene or to relieve the obstruction. Whenever there are signs of acute cholangitis, patient is in severe sepsis and shock, ongoing the infection or ongoing inflammatory syndrome, and presence of cholestasis as per the labs, we have to do ERCP on emergency basis within 48 hours of admission to relieve the obstruction and but for better outcomes of the patient. MRCP. The role of MRCP comes when the etiology of the pancreatitis is not clear, especially to rule out microlithiasis. MRCP can pick up CVD stones of even less than 3 mm. What is the role of endoscopic ultrasound? It is to know the etiology of the acute pancreatitis. With the help of endoscopic ultrasound, we can diagnose pancreatic division and sphincter of body dysfunction. What are the principles of management? Mainly there are four principles. We have to follow these four principles while managing the patient. IV fluids. Because of acute pancreatitis, there will be third space loss and severe intravascular volume depletion. So we need to replenish and we have to optimize intravascular volume. We can take help of heart rate, blood pressure, urine output, and hematocrit, especially hematocrit. The target of hematocrit should be less than 44, and the blood urea nitrogen should be in decreasing trend. These are all clinical parameters and lab parameters with the help of which we can titrate our IV fluids. If possible, we can take help of all advanced hemodynamic monitoring like stroke volume variation, extravascular lung water, and other cardiac indices. We can take the help of advanced hemodynamic monitoring to titrate our IV fluids. Analgesia. Analgesia, we have to relieve the pain as early as possible and as fast as possible with the help of IV opioids or any other mode of analgesia. If IV opioids is not able to relieve his pain, better to give thoracic epidural. Enteric feed. We have to start patient on enteric feed as early as possible within 48 hours of admission. This can be nasogastric feed or orogastric feed, and we need to put all efforts to know the etiology of acute pancreatitis to prevent recurrence of the disease. So the dilemma or argument is whether it is pre-pyloric feed or post-pyloric feed. It has been well proven that there is no superiority of the post-pyloric feed over the pre-pyloric feed. In fact, initiation of post-pyloric feed is bit complex and bit cumbersome, increase the stress of the patient. We need to place the tube with the help of endoscope in the duodenum, like that is post-pyloric part. So pre-pyloric feeds are preferred over the post-pyloric feeds. Not only that, the idea of post-pyloric feed is to prevent release of the enzymes from the pancreas to decrease the stress on the pancreas. But it has been well proven that there is no difference uh, in terms of stress on the pancreas, stress on the digestive system in both the routes. So pre-pyloric is preferred over the post-pyloric. There is no difference in terms of the outcome. In fact, post-pyloric feed, initiation of post-pyloric feed is a bit complex and increase the stress on the patient. What is the role and timing of cholecystectomy? If it is simple pancreatitis, if it is a mild acute pancreatitis, presents sorry, if it is mild acute pancreatitis because of the gallstones, in the first admission itself, we have to do cholecystectomy. If there are no local complications, if there is no severe local inflammation or pancreatic necrosis, we can always do uh, cholecystectomy in the first admission itself. If there are local complication and patient general condition is not very good, in the shock or severe SIRS response, better to wait or better to wait till those local signs and systemic condition improves. What is the role of antibiotics? Of course, there is no role of antibiotic in the first week. By the end of first week, if there is no clinical improvement or new onset of organ dysfunction, then we need to suspect infected pancreatic necrosis. Empirically, we can add antibiotics which have better penetration into the pancreas. Those are carbapenems, quinolones, and metronidazole. Because of evolution of resistance to quinolones, better to prefer carbapenems over quinolones, and we can add metronidazole for anaerobic cover. What is the step up approach? If there is new onset organ dysfunction, if there is no improvement of the clinical improvement in terms of the clinical condition, even after 1 week of management, we should always suspect secondary infections, that is pancreatic, necrotizing acute infected acute pancreatitis. So in such scenario, one approach is we have to initiate patient on empirical antibiotics which have good penetration into the pancreas like carbapenems and metronidazole. If there is improvement, we can confirm it as infected necrosis, then continue the antibiotic for full course. If there is no improvement, we can do endoscopic guided or CT guided FNAC and send that sample for the culture sensitivity, and we can optimize our antibiotic. Another approach is in the first sitting itself, you can do CT guided FNAC and send the sample for the cultures and start the antibiotic appropriately as per the culture sensitivity report. Even with the help of or even after initiation of the appropriate antibiotics, if clinical condition doesn't improve, we have to go ahead with minimally invasive surgical procedures like endoscopic or CT guided debridement of the necrosis. Even after minimally invasive surgeries, there is no improvement, then that is the that is when we need to consider open surgical debridement. As far as possible, during first 4 weeks, avoid open surgical debridement because that will increase the mortality and other complications. What is the role and timing of drainage? Of course, during first 4 weeks, there is no role of drainage because it will further increase the complication, increase the mortality, high chances of gastric perforations, and high chance of pancreatic fistulas. So after 4 weeks of onset of the disease, in spite of your appropriate antibiotic therapy, if there is no improvement of organ failure, if there is no improvement of the clinical condition, then you can go ahead with minimally invasive drainage methods like CT guided or endoscopic guided drainage. If there are signs of obstruction, gastric outlet obstruction, biliary obstruction, intestinal obstruction due to big pseudocyst or because of necrotic collection or because of disconnect duct syndrome, that is when you can consider the drainage of pancreas with the help of endoscopy or percutaneous CT guided percutaneous drainage. After 8 weeks of the disease, if there are any signs of obstruction, gastric outlet obstruction or intestinal obstruction because of the pseudocyst or walled off the cyst, then that is when you can consider surgical management or drainage method. What are the complications of the pancreatitis? There are many complications. Coming to local complication, there can be pseudocyst, necrosis, peripancreatic inflammation, splenic vein thrombus, portal vein thrombosis, and pancreatic gastric fistula. Systemic complications, lung failure, ARDS, abdominal compartment syndrome, renal failure, liver failure, encephalopathy, and some bleeding complications can happen. Coagulopathy, DIC, these are all systemic complications we can see in case of acute pancreatitis. As I told you in first few slides, peripheral retinopathy is one of dreaded complication of severe acute pancreatitis. With this, I'm going to sign off and we'll meet you very soon with other interesting topic and with other interesting discussion.